My name is Shirley Kennedy, and I'm 32 years old. The flash from my brother's phone camera lit up the room again, catching Mom's smile, mid-laughter, as 70 candles flickered across her birthday cake. The air smelled of buttercream and nostalgia, but it all felt staged, like I was watching a family I used to belong to through glass. Shirley, get in the photo, Aunt Diane called half-heartedly, her hand already lowering the phone before I could move. No one made space for me anyway. Derek had one arm wrapped proudly around his wife Amanda and the other around Mom. I stood off to the side, glass of sparkling cider in hand, pretending it was champagne. 3 years. That's how long I'd been away. 3 years since my family decided I was unreliable, selfish, dramatic. They thought I'd abandoned them, run off to find myself, as Aunt Diane liked to say in that mocking tone that made everything sound like a sin. They didn't know the truth. They couldn't know. I smiled, pretending to scroll through my phone, while Derek started cutting slices of cake. Amanda's laugh was sharp and deliberate, the kind of sound that made sure everyone noticed her. "So, Shirley," she said suddenly, tilting her head, "still working that mysterious job of yours?" A few relatives chuckled. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. "Yeah," I said softly, "still there." "Must be nice," Derek added loudly. "Whatever it is you do, must pay well if it keeps you too busy to visit for holidays." I let the jab slide. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, it was waiting. Waiting for me to defend myself, to explain. But explanations were dangerous. Mom placed a gentle hand on Derek's arm. "Not now, honey. It's my birthday." But Derek's grin said now was exactly the time. "Actually, Mom, it's the perfect time. Since we're all here, there's something we should talk about." The fork in my hand felt suddenly heavy. He pulled out his phone again, tapping a few times, then turned the screen toward me. "Your house," he said. "It's sold." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your house. The one in Philadelphia. You know the 3-bedroom colonial you bought 5 years ago? It's been sitting empty for 3 years. I found a buyer, negotiated a good price, and closed the deal last week." I stared at the screen. Photos of my house, my porch, my living room. The sold banner cut across like a scar. "You sold my house." My voice came out quieter than I expected. "I handled your abandoned property," he corrected. "You weren't paying taxes, weren't maintaining it. The HOA was threatening liens. I did what you should have done years ago. I took responsibility." Amanda crossed her arms, lips curling. "Honestly, Shirley, you should be grateful. He saved you from losing it altogether." My fingers tightened around the glass. "And how exactly," I asked, "did you sell a house you don't own?" Derek smirked like he'd been waiting for that question. "Power of attorney." Amanda answered for him. "Signed, notarized, and filed 2 years ago. You gave him the right to handle your affairs in Pennsylvania." My heart skipped. "That's impossible. I never signed any power of attorney." "Oh, come on." Derek scrolled again and held up another image. "You were barely communicating with us back then. You probably don't even remember signing it." The photo showed my signature perfectly forged. Even the loop in the M looked identical. The notary stamp was dated 18 months ago. 18 months ago, I'd been under federal protection in Oregon. Unreachable. Untraceable. "That's not my signature," I said, voice steady but trembling inside. Derek rolled his eyes. Classic Shirley, avoiding responsibility, blaming everyone else. I forced a small breath, the way I'd been trained to do when adrenaline hit. Slow, controlled, measured. "Where's the money?" He blinked. "What money?" "The $875,000 from the sale." "Oh, that." He gave a casual shrug. "Paid off your debts, property taxes, HOA fees, maintenance costs, legal fees for the sale. And after everything Mom and Dad have done for you, I thought they deserved something for the stress you've caused." Mom frowned. "Derek, we didn't ask." "You didn't have to ask," he cut in. "She disappeared for 3 years. The least she owes you is some of the money from the house she clearly didn't want." "How much?" I asked. Amanda smiled. 200,000. More than fair if you ask me. "And the rest?" "Expenses," Derek said, waving a hand. "There's about 50,000 left. I was going to give it to you tonight, actually. Consider it a gift for finally showing up." He pulled out an envelope and dropped it on the coffee table. "You should be thanking me." "I didn't touch it. You forged my signature," I said quietly. "I handled your mess," Derek snapped. "You committed fraud." The room erupted. "Don't you dare accuse your brother." Mom said, her voice shaking. "He's been here while you've been God knows where. You show up once in 3 years and start throwing around accusations." "You're unbelievable," Amanda added. "The house was abandoned. You left it behind like everything else." "It wasn't abandoned," I said. My tone was calm, but a pulse throbbed behind my temple. It was being maintained. By who? Derek demanded. I drove by a dozen times. It looked dead. The laughter, the arguments, the rising heat in the room blurred into static. I caught my reflection in the glass cabinet, pale face, tight jaw, trembling hand, clutching my cider. My smartwatch vibrated faintly against my wrist. Pulse rate elevated. They were monitoring me. The marshals. Enough, Dad said, standing up. Derek, Shirley, this is Mom's birthday. We're not doing this now. I agree, I said softly, placing the glass on the table. We'll handle it soon. My brother's grin widened, triumphant. It's already handled, Shirley. The sale is closed. Done. You lost your right to that house when you walked away. I looked him straight in the eyes, every muscle in my body going still. You shouldn't have done that, I said. Or what he mocked. The doorbell rang. Emma, my cousin, jumped up. I'll get it. The chatter died down as she disappeared into the hallway. A second later, her voice floated back, uncertain. Can I help you? Then a deeper voice answered, firm, professional. U.S. Marshals Service. We need to speak with Shirley Kennedy immediately. Every sound in the room froze. The laughter, the clinking dishes, even Derek's smug expression. Emma reappeared in the doorway, face pale. Shirley, there are federal agents here for you. I set down my phone slowly. I'll handle it, I said, standing up. And for the first time in 3 years, I saw my family look at me, not with disappointment, but with fear. The living room fell silent as two men in dark suits stepped inside. Their shoes left faint marks on the carpet Mom had just vacuumed that morning. I recognized one of them instantly, Deputy Marshal James Walsh. The other, younger, unfamiliar, scanned the room like he'd been trained to find exits. Miss Kennedy, Walsh said evenly, we need to speak with you. Mom blinked, confused. Marshals? What's this about? My daughter hasn't done anything wrong. Walsh held up a badge. Ma'am, I need everyone to remain seated. The younger agent's hand hovered near his waist holster, a quiet reminder of authority. The room smelled of vanilla frosting and panic. Shirley, Derek said, standing halfway. What the hell is going on? Why are there federal agents here? I didn't answer him. I looked at Walsh instead. I assume this is about the property alert. His expression tightened. Yes. Our system flagged a sale transaction linked to your protected assets. We came to verify. Protected, Dad repeated. What are you talking about? Sir, I'll explain in a moment, Walsh said. Then he turned back to me. Did you authorize any sale of your Philadelphia residence? No, I said clearly. I haven't been to that property in 3 years. Walsh nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Derek frowned. Excuse me, what's happening here? That house was abandoned. I had power of attorney. Everything was legal. Walsh turned to him sharply. You had what? Power of attorney. Derek repeated, his tone rising. Legal authority to handle her affairs. I sold the house to help her. The younger marshal, his name tag read. Chin pulled out a notepad. Sir, I'm going to need to see that document. Derek fumbled for his phone, scrolling through photos, his earlier confidence slipping. Here. He held it out. Walsh examined the image for only a few seconds before his jaw set. This is fraudulent. Amanda gasped. Excuse me. The notary stamp is fake, Walsh. Continued coldly. The date listed Ms. Kennedy was under federal protection at that time. She couldn't have signed anything, much less granted power of attorney. Derek's face went pale. Federal protection. What are you talking about? Wait, what does that mean? Mom stammered. Protection from what? Walsh exhaled. Ma'am, your daughter has been part of a federal witness security program for the past 3 years. Her assets and location are classified under federal law. Any sale, transfer, or access to those assets constitutes a violation of that protection. The words crashed over the room like thunder. Amanda took a step back. Witness security, like witness protection. I could feel everyone's eyes burning into me. Years of judgment, gossip, resentment, all suspended in that one heavy silence. Dad's voice trembled. What did you do, Shirley? I didn't do anything, I said quietly. I saw something. At work. I testified against people you don't ever want to meet. Derek shook his head. No, this is insane. I was just trying to help. I didn't forge anything. Walsh's tone hardened. Sir, you forged a legal document and sold a federally protected asset. That's a felony, multiple felonies, in fact. Amanda started crying. He didn't know. She never told us. She couldn't tell you, Walsh said, voice sharp. That's what classified means, Mrs. Kennedy. The room erupted all at once. You lied to us for years, Aunt Diane cried. You disappeared without explanation, Dad yelled. Mom's voice was breaking. You could have been killed, Shirley. I couldn't meet her eyes. That's why I left, to make sure you weren't. Derek slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. You're twisting this. You could have said something before I sold it. I couldn't. My voice cracked for the first time. Everything I owned, including that house, was classified. It wasn't even legally mine until the case ended. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You ruined my life over a house. Walsh cut in. No, Mr. Kennedy. You ruined your own life when you committed federal fraud. He nodded toward Chin. Call it in. Chin spoke quietly into his radio, his tone calm but clipped, requesting immediate verification of fraudulent property sale, Philadelphia district. Suspect Derek Kennedy. The tension in the room turned suffocating. Amanda grabbed Derek's arm, sobbing. Please, there must be a way to fix this. There isn't, Walsh said. The sale is void. The funds will be frozen. The buyers contacted by federal authorities. All transactions will be sealed under court order. Mom's voice broke. Please, she's his sister. There has to be another way. Walsh looked at me. Actually, there is. Ms. Kennedy, do you wish to press charges? The air stopped moving. Derek stared at me, disbelief flashing across his face. You wouldn't. I looked at my brother, the boy who used to push me off swings, the man who now stole nearly $1 million from me, and realized that I didn't feel anger, just clarity. Yes, I said softly, I do. Mom's cry echoed through the house. Shirley, no. He forged federal documents, I said. He sold property under witness protection. He endangered me. Derek stepped back, shaking his head. You can't do this. We're family. Family doesn't put each other in danger, I said. Walsh motioned to Chin, who approached Derek carefully. Derek Kennedy, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice involving a federal witness protection case. He reached for the cuffs. Mom screamed, lunging forward. Stop, he didn't mean to. Walsh's tone was calm but final. Ma'am, intent doesn't erase the crime. Amanda sobbed. Dad's face was stone. Derek struggled as the cuffs clicked shut. You're destroying this family, he shouted at me. You've been doing it since the day you left. I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, Derek. I just stopped letting you destroy me. Walsh gave a brief nod to Chin. Get him in the car. As they led my brother out, the room dissolved into chaos. Amanda crying, Mom shouting, Dad's voice cracking with fury. I stood still, the sound fading around me, and realized I wasn't shaking anymore, just empty. Walsh turned to me quietly. Ms. Kennedy, we need to relocate you immediately. This incident compromises your current cover. I nodded numbly. I understand. Pack what you brought, he said. We're leaving now. Mom grabbed my wrist as I passed her. Her eyes were red, pleading. Please, Shirley, don't take him away. I met her gaze. He took everything from me. All I'm taking is justice. Her hand slipped away. Outside, the night air hit cold and clean. The birthday candles had burned out, leaving only smoke curling through the open door. The Marshall's SUV waited at the curb, its engine low and steady like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I got in without looking back. The car door shut with a solid thunk, sealing the noise of my family's chaos behind me. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing, uneven, sharp, filling the silence between the three of us. Walsh drove. Chin sat beside him, phone pressed to his ear, murmuring codes and case numbers into the receiver. The government-issued SUV smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights pass in rhythmic flashes. Each one made my reflection flicker, me, then gone. It felt fitting. That's what I'd been for 3 years, visible only in fragments. Walsh spoke first. You handled that well back there. I let out a hollow laugh. Is that what that was? Handling it. He glanced at me in the mirror. You stayed calm. Didn't escalate. That's more than most people could do when their entire family finds out they're living under federal protection. I turned my gaze back to the dark streets. They hate me now. They'll hate you until they understand what you did was to keep them alive, Walsh said simply. His words sat heavy in the air, because that was the truth. 3 years ago, I'd been working as a senior forensic accountant at Morrison & Price. I'd thought uncovering irregularities in a client's accounts would make me a hero at the firm. Instead, it had made me a target. My discovery, millions laundered through shell companies tied to organized crime, had sparked a federal case that was still ongoing. I'd testified before a grand jury, and afterward I'd vanished. Not by choice, by necessity. The witness security program had become my reality. New address, new phone monitored communications, and a house in Philadelphia that technically wasn't mine anymore because it was under protection. Until tonight, no one had known. Not Mom, not Dad, certainly not Derek. Now all that secrecy was gone. Walsh's phone buzzed. He answered, his tone clipped. Walsh, yes, We confirm the forged documents. Notify Philadelphia PD and Federal Property Management to freeze the sale record. No, she's secure. We're en route to the Delaware safe house. He hung up and sighed. The buyers will be contacted by morning. The sale's being voided. The funds already frozen. Will Derek actually go to prison? I asked quietly. Yes, he said, not sugarcoating it. Forgery, fraud, obstruction. He'll face charges in federal court. It won't be a slap on the wrist. I nodded, but the thought made my chest ache in a way I didn't expect. He's still my brother, I whispered. Sometimes family's the hardest truth, Walsh replied. The car pulled into a quiet neighborhood 2 hours later, rows of identical townhouses, dim porch lights, the kind of anonymity the marshals loved. Chin got out first, scanning the street with a flashlight before signaling clear. Inside the safe house smelled of fresh paint and new carpet. Walsh showed me around mechanically bedrooms upstairs. Kitchen stocked. We'll rotate security every 12 hours. You'll have a temporary phone by morning. He paused when he saw me standing in the hallway frozen. It never gets easier, does it? I said softly, leaving them. He shook his head. No, but it gets quieter. That night I sat on the bed staring at my watch as the biometric monitor pulsed softly against my wrist. Every beat reminded me of how small the world had become. A message blinked across the small screen: status safe, location locked. Safe. The word didn't mean what it used to. Morning came with a knock on the door. Walsh entered holding 2 cups of coffee. We debrief in 10. He handed me one. The property sale is officially void. The money's being returned. The house is secure again. I wrapped my hands around the cup, letting the warmth anchor me and my family. They're in shock, he said. Your father's demanding to talk to someone in charge. Your mother's crying on the phone to the local news saying this must be a mistake. I exhaled slowly. She'll never forgive me. She might one day, he said. But forgiveness isn't your job right now. Survival is. I stared into the black coffee, its surface trembling with each heartbeat. When I agreed to testify, I knew I'd lose my privacy. I didn't realize I'd lose them too. Walsh looked at me thoughtfully. You didn't lose them. They just can't see your side yet. I almost smiled. You really believe that? He gave a half shrug. I've seen families collapse over less, and I've seen some rebuild after worse. The difference is whether they learn the truth before it's too late. Maybe for them it's already too late, I murmured. Hours later, as dusk fell, Walsh returned with an update. They've booked Derek. He's being held overnight. His attorney's requesting bail, but the prosecutor's opposing it. Given the forged federal documentation, it's unlikely he'll get out before arraignment. I felt my throat tighten. Amanda. She's cooperating. Claims she didn't know. We'll verify. Of course she'll say that, I said bitterly. Amanda never gets her hands dirty. She just tells Derek where to dig. Walsh said nothing. The silence stretched heavy and familiar. Finally, I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since last night. Do you ever stop feeling guilty for choosing the law over blood? He studied me for a long moment before answering. You don't stop feeling it. You just stop letting it decide for you. Outside, a storm rolled in. The kind of rain that blurred everything into gray. I stood by the window watching the street vanish behind the curtain of water. Somewhere out there, my brother was sitting in a holding cell, my parents were hating me on live television, and the people I'd testified against were waiting for any sign of weakness. And me, I was safe, alone but safe. I turned away from the window and whispered to myself, that has to be enough. It didn't sound convincing. When morning came, the sky over Delaware looked washed out, muted blues and grays bleeding into one another. I'd barely slept. My dreams had been filled with echoes of my mother's voice, with the sound of handcuffs snapping closed, with Derek shouting that I'd destroyed the family. The safe house was quiet. Walsh had already left for the courthouse. Only Chin was there, sipping coffee in the kitchen, scrolling through updates on his tablet. He looked up when I walked in. Rough night. I managed a tired nod. Do the marshals ever get used to the sound of someone's life falling apart? He gave a small smile, not unkind. You'd be surprised how often that sound means justice working. I didn't answer. Justice was such a complicated word, clean in theory, ugly in practice. He slid a tablet across the table. News Cycle picked it up. On the screen was the headline, Federal Witness's Brother Arrested in Fraud Case. Below it, a photo of Derek being escorted out of our family home in handcuffs. Mom's face appeared in the background, mid-scream mouth open in disbelief. I stared at it until the words blurred. They'll never forgive me, I murmured. They might, Chin said softly, but not yet. Right now, they're still mourning the version of you they thought they knew. By noon, Walsh returned. His tie was loosened, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. It's done, he said simply. Derek was arraigned this morning. No bail. He's being held pending trial. I swallowed hard. Did he say anything? Not much. Just kept asking why you didn't tell him, why you didn't trust him. Walsh's tone carried no judgment, but the words still stung. I used to, I said quietly, when we were kids. He was older, louder, unshakable. He used to stand up for me. Walsh sat down across from me. Used to. I nodded, until I started being better than him. The confession came out before I could stop it. I laughed bitterly. When I got my first promotion, he called me the family accountant with a calculator for a heart. He'd tease me in front of everyone, say I'd never have a real life because all I cared about were numbers. He didn't mean it cruelly at first, but then it started to sound like envy. Walsh listened silent. When I bought that house in Philly, I continued. He said I was trying to outgrow them. Maybe I was. Maybe I wanted to prove I could build something without help, but I never thought he'd actually steal it. He didn't just steal property, Walsh said. He tried to take away your autonomy, your proof that you made it. I met his gaze, and I still lost it anyway. He leaned back. You'll get it back, Shirley. All of it. The house, your life, everything. I wanted to believe him. 2 days later, I was moved to a new safe house closer to the coast. Smaller, quieter, too quiet. At night, the only sound was the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside. The marshals handled my relocation like clockwork. Security check, transport plan, new ID tags. By now, I knew the procedure better than I knew my own reflection. On the third night, I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through headlines again. Mom had given an interview to the local news. Her voice was trembling through the screen. My daughter's always been secretive. Derek only did what any responsible person would do. He thought she'd abandoned that house. She ruined his life over a misunderstanding. Then Dad's statement. Shirley's turned her back on her family for the government. She's cold, unforgiving. We don't recognize her anymore. I closed the laptop. The silence afterward felt heavier than the words themselves. Walsh knocked on the open door. You shouldn't read those, he said gently. I needed to hear it, I said. They've chosen their side. He hesitated. You don't sound angry. I'm not, I said. I'm just tired. I thought doing the right thing would bring peace. It doesn't. It just brings quiet. Walsh looked at me for a long moment. Quiet's not always bad. It's where you start rebuilding. Weeks passed. The trial for the money laundering case began. I spent long hours rehearsing testimony with the prosecutors, reviewing financial records, preparing exhibits. Every time I took the stand, I felt the weight of the people I'd betrayed: my brother, my family, my past. But every time I looked at the defendants, the men I'd helped expose, I remembered why I'd done it. They had destroyed lives hidden behind spreadsheets and shell companies. My work had brought them down. When the verdict came in guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted. I sat there in silence, hands folded in my lap, heart beating so hard I could hear it. Walsh leaned over. It's over. Is it? I asked. He gave a faint smile. For them, yes. For you, not quite yet. He was right. Derek still had to face his own trial. The morning they transferred him to federal custody, Walsh came to tell me personally. He's being processed at Allenwood, he said. It'll take time before sentencing, but he'll be there a while. I stared at the photo on the table, Mom, Dad, Derek, and me, from years ago, at another birthday party. I was maybe 10. Derek was holding a sparkler, smiling like he owned the world. You know what's funny, I said quietly. When I was little, he told me if I ever got lost, he'd always find me, no matter what. Walsh tilted his head. And now, I looked up at him. Now I think he tried too hard. He didn't reply, but I saw understanding in his eyes. That night, as I packed for relocation again, I took one last look around the safe house, the walls, the cheap lamp, the government-issued sheets. 3 years ago, I'd left my home to stay alive. Tonight, I was leaving it again to stay free. And somewhere between those two truths, I realized something. You can survive a lot of things, but you don't come back the same. 6 months later, the storm had passed, at least the kind you could see on a weather map. The criminal organization I'd testified against was dismantled. Every major player convicted. My role as the lead forensic witness had been key to the prosecution. I'd done my job. The trial was over. The danger theoretically gone. When the marshals finally told me I could leave witness protection, I wasn't sure how to feel. Freedom wasn't the same as peace. Walsh drove me back to Philadelphia himself. You ready to see it again? He asked as the car turned onto the tree-lined street where my house stood. The sight of it hit harder than I expected. Fresh paint, trimmed hedges. The front porch light glowed softly like nothing had ever happened. It looked alive. But it wasn't home, not yet. Walsh handed me a set of keys. Market says it's worth $950 now. You could sell it. I looked at the windows, the door, the empty mailbox. I think I'll keep it, I said. He smiled faintly. You've earned it. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. My old furniture, the framed photos, even the faint lemon scent from the property maintenance crew. I stood in the hallway, pressing a hand to the wall, like it was an old friend who might not remember me. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath without looking over my shoulder. The next few months passed quietly. I started my new position as a forensic accountant for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, an offer that came straight from the prosecutor's office. It was meaningful work. I was good at it. But late at night, when I sat in my home office reviewing case files, I still checked the locks 3 times. Some habits don't fade, they just evolve. And then one chilly Tuesday morning, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the security camera feed. A woman stood outside mid-40s, wearing a gray blazer, holding a leather briefcase. She wasn't familiar, but her stance told me she wasn't there to sell anything. I opened the door, careful but polite. Can I help you? Ms. Kennedy, she asked. Yes. She offered a small, practiced smile. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm an attorney representing your brother Derek. My chest went cold. I'm not interested in appeals or negotiations. She raised a hand quickly. Please, it's nothing like that. Derek asked me to deliver something. From her briefcase, she produced a sealed envelope. My name written across it in Derek's messy scrawl. What is it I asked, though I already knew? A letter, she said softly. He's been in Allenwood for 6 months now. He wanted you to have this. He told me. He doesn't expect forgiveness. He just wants you to know he understands what he did. Her tone was calm, not persuasive, not defensive, just human. I took the envelope without another word. Thank you. Jennifer hesitated, then added quietly. He said you were the only person who ever made him feel small, not because you tried to, but because you made him see who he wasn't. Her eyes softened. He's different now. I didn't respond. When she left, the sound of the door closing felt heavier than it should have. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time before I opened the envelope. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, like it belonged to someone who'd finally run out of defenses. Shirley, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to care, but Jennifer promised she'd try to deliver it, so here it is. You were right about everything. I didn't sell your house to help. I sold it because I could, because I was jealous, because part of me wanted you to fail, so I wouldn't have to keep feeling like the failure myself. You were always the one who did everything right, the one Mom bragged about, the one Dad secretly admired but would never admit it. I hated how easy it seemed for you, how you made success look effortless, while I was still trying to figure out how to stand still. When you left, I told myself you'd run away, that you'd fallen apart, that your perfect little life had finally cracked. It made me feel better. That's the truth. I wanted you gone. When the house sat empty, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by selling it. I even convinced Amanda, but deep down I knew. I knew I was stealing from you. I didn't know about witness protection, but if I'm honest with myself, I'm not sure it would have stopped me. I was that far gone into my resentment. Prison has a way of stripping away excuses. I think about you every day. About the way you looked at me when I realized what I'd done. You weren't angry, not really. You were disappointed. That's worse. I'm sorry, not just for the house or the money or the signature. I'm sorry for being your brother and never acting like one. I'm sorry for every time I made you smaller to make myself feel bigger. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you'll at least believe I mean this. You deserve better. Derek. By the time I reached the end, the paper was damp under my fingers. I wasn't crying, not exactly. Just breathing differently. It was a good apology, honest, full of the kind of clarity that only comes when you've lost everything. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into the top drawer of my desk. Not thrown away, not displayed, just kept a record of what had been broken and what had finally been understood. That night I walked out onto the porch. The street was quiet, washed in orange lamplight. A light wind rustled the trees, the kind of sound that once made me anxious, now oddly comforting. Somewhere in a federal cell, my brother was trying to become a man I could someday forgive. Maybe he would. Maybe he wouldn't. But for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone else to change so I could move on. Inside, the letter waited in its drawer. Outside, I finally exhaled. 3 years passed. Time has a way of softening the sharp edges of memory, but it never quite smooths them away. Every so often, I still caught myself reaching for my phone before remembering there was no one to call, not my parents, not Derek. Especially not Derek. I heard about his release from Aunt Diane's Facebook post. Welcome home, Derek. We missed you. Just like that 3 years of prison became a family reunion post, wrapped in emojis and denial. I didn't comment, I didn't react. I simply closed the app and stared at the quiet reflection of my house in the window. That same day, I signed papers, finalizing my promotion Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's CN Financial Crimes Division. I'd spent the last few years leading investigations that recovered hundreds of millions in stolen assets. I was good at it, ruthlessly good. Every time I caught someone forging documents or manipulating accounts, I thought of Derek's handwriting on that fake power of attorney. Every time I saw a family destroyed by greed, I remembered my mother crying in our living room while the marshals led him away. It wasn't bitterness anymore, just memory, like a healed scar, painless but visible. I eventually sold the Philadelphia house for $1.2 million and moved to a brownstone in Washington, D.C. The rooms there were smaller but quieter. I decorated it myself. White walls, walnut floors, minimalist furniture, clean lines, no ghosts. Sometimes when new agents joined my division, they whispered about my reputation. She's cold but brilliant. She never misses a detail. She's the one who turned in her own brother. They weren't wrong. They just didn't know the full story that turning him in hadn't been about vengeance or pride. It had been about survival, about learning that morality isn't gray when your life's on the line. You either do the right thing or you live with the weight of not doing it. One evening, after a long day of depositions, I came home to silence. The city hummed faintly outside, traffic voices, life going on. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. The top drawer of my desk creaked when I opened it. The letter was still there, edges yellowed slightly with time. I hadn't touched it since the day I'd read it. For a moment, I considered reading it again, but I didn't. Some apologies don't need revisiting. They just need remembering. I closed the drawer gently and leaned back in my chair, letting the sound of the rain against the window fill the room. Sometimes I wondered if Derek ever really changed, if prison had rebuilt him into something stronger, or just broken him down. I'd heard from mutual acquaintances that he'd moved out west after release, working for a small construction firm, keeping to himself. Amanda had divorced him, remarried. My parents had retired to Florida, and last I heard, they still refused to speak my name. That used to hurt. Now it didn't. Some silences protect your sanity better than forgiveness ever could. Late that night, I walked into my home office. The city lights spilled across my desk, cold white lines cutting through the darkness. Case files lay open, wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. I picked up my pen and began to annotate. Halfway through, I caught my reflection in the window, calm, steady, unreadable. It hit me then, the life I'd built wasn't the one I'd dreamed of. It wasn't filled with laughter or family dinners or birthday candles, but it was mine, built from honesty, rebuilt from loss. I didn't regret pressing charges. I didn't regret choosing justice. Because doing the right thing doesn't always make you happy, it just makes you free. I smiled faintly, turned off the desk lamp, and whispered to the empty room. That's worth everything.